Okay, as I been saying, tonight's discussion is about the evil eye, and we have two articles. I don't know if we'll get through them both tonight. One is, does the Bible believe in the evil eye? And it will start off by discussing the evil eye in pre-biblical and pre-Judaic context. And then the second one is about the Yiddish word kahara, which if you grew up in an Ashkenazi Jewish household, that is one word that you typically knew.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. Would someone like to read? Joanne, you're usually a volunteer to read.
Okay. Do you
Okay,
watch?
so does
We're gonna read
text up? Oh, sorry, I ought to do that. I can see it. I don't know why you guys can't see it. I see it just fine. Okay. Yep. So I presume you can see it now. Does the Bible believe in the evil eye?
The belief in the power of an angry or jealous person's eye to damage others was pervasive in the ancient Near East, in Jewish antiquity and medieval times. But what does the Bible say? Walk into a traditional gift shop around the Mediterranean and you might see a collection of brightly colored necklaces or keychains or pottery items with several concentric circles. In Jewish or Islamic stores, you might even find a khamsa, a hand-shaped amulet, which sometimes has a picture of an eye in the palm. Although largely viewed as souvenirs of fashion accessories by Western tourists today, these charms are intended to protect the wearer from the evil eye, the harmful glance of another, and reflect a belief that dates back to antiquity.
So I'm actually going to stop sharing for a moment. I figured I had to show you guys a khamsa. So here's one that's actually a magnet. So there's actually a bunch of interesting things going on with this khamsa. And particularly the origin of the khamsa is Muslim. It's like Fatima's hand. I think Fatima is Muhammad's daughter-in-law. But I should check that. So you can see the eye at the top. Everybody see the eye?
Yes.
And right below it is the Hebrew word chai for life.
Mhm.
And then below that, there is actually a fish. Can you see the fish?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And let me see if there's anything else interesting going on. There are 5 fingers, but can you tell which one is the thumb and which one is the pinky?
No, they're symmetrical.
They're symmetric. And I once heard a story that means you can't tell whether you're giving or taking. So it works both ways. So I thought that was kind of cute.
Or the person could be an alien.
That's true. And I know that I've mentioned in other times. Whoops, do we have the screen share? Yep, we see it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I know I mentioned that in the Sephardic world, people don't give gifts, and the special number is not 18. In the Ashkenazi world, if you grew up in a Jewish home, people were making gifts of $18 and donations of $180 and so on. And that, of course, the 18 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word chai, which means life. In the Sephardic world, they haven't heard, or at least Sonia's family hadn't heard of 18 at all. Everything was 5 for khamsa. And in fact, khamsa is probably the Arabic word for 5. The Hebrew word for 5 is chamesh. So you can hear the same sound. In fact, we call a Torah in a book a chumash, which is the same root for the 5 books of Moses. Okay.
And that's in Aramaic, Chumash? Or where's
No, chumash is Hebrew.
Hebrew, okay.
Yeah, but it comes from the root, which is the Hebrew number 5. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the evil eye in Sumer and beyond. And there's, I guess, an example from 1000 to 664 BC, Metropolitan Museum. I'm going to see if I can make it even a little bigger. Yeah, it works. Okay.
That's good. Belief.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, belief in the evil eye,
I have
e.g.
no idea how to pronounce that.
in Sumerian, can be traced to an ancient 3000 BCE. In the lament for Sumer and Urim, for instance, the god Enlil puts the evil eye on the sons of the loyal men to decimate them, while the lament for Eredug and Lil looked maliciously at Sumer, he demolished it. The instructions of Surapag warns, do not do evil with your eye, and even describes this as worse than a curse.
Okay, so Bryce.
Whoever insults can only hurt the skin. Greedy eyes, however, can kill.
When I say I couldn't do it better myself, I don't mean that as false modesty. Okay, let's continue.
This belief was not limited to Sumer and can be found in cultures across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Greece. A spell from the old Babylonian period, for instance, details the havoc wrought by the evil eye. The eye is
Okay,
a
hold on a
fearsome...
second. We're going to let Bryce do this.
The eye is a fearsome snake. The eye of the man is a fearsome snake. The eye of the evil man is a fearsome snake. It approached heaven. It did not rain. It approached the earth. Herbs did not grow. It approached the ox. It broke its yoke. It approached the cattle pen. Its cheese became bad. It catches the kasura fish. It approached the young man. He lost his strength. It approached the young woman. She lost her garment. It approached the nurse with child. Her hold became loose. It approached the vegetables. Lettuce and cress became bad. It approached the garden. The fruit became bad. The eye of the mountain came out from the mountain. The wild ram let its shining horns out.
Okay. Let's read about the mechanics of the Alan. Yeah.
Bryce, do you do Shakespeare also?
Oh, but he did Darth Vader, right?
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah. That's why I thought Darth Vader voice is perfect with it.
Well,
Okay.
that was pretty evil. So there you
Okay.
go.
The mechanics of the evil eye. Belief in the evil eye relies on a physiological understanding of the eye that is quite different from our own. According to modern science, vision occurs when an external light enters into the eye and is converted into electrical signals that the brain can process into recognizable images. In other words, the eye is a fairly passive organ. It cannot act until acted upon by an outside force. In antiquity, the reverse was thought to be true. The ancient Greeks, for instance, argued that light from within the eye shot forth, connected with objects, and then returned to the eye. The eye's light collected information about the objects it interacted with, but it could also negatively influence the environment. Certain individuals, typically widows or strangers, namely those who did not fit into the normal constraints of society, were thought to possess an eye so powerful that its light could harm or destroy any object, animate or inanimate, on which it falls. Whether acquired naturally or through an unknown supernatural force, a deity or a demon, they were believed to use their evil eye to take from others what they themselves could not have. The victims were typically the young or those experiencing a change in social status, a birth, marriage, or death in the family. These individuals were vulnerable to misfortune, premature death, the envy of neighbors, the loss of resources. Those engaged in agriculture were also vulnerable, as lack of rainfall or a sudden change in weather could decimate crops vital for the entire community's survival.
So here's another eye idol from, wow, 3700, 3500 BC.
The evil eye was a way to explain these misfortunes. People believe that they did not lose a child due to high infant mortality rates, disease, or malnutrition. The child died because some envious member of the community cast an evil eye. Farmers did not lose crops due to climate shifts or mismanagement. The field withered because an evil eye caused it to do so. To protect against these misfortunes, individuals wore specially designed amulets, cast incantations, or applied special substances to their houses or their bodies. The Eye of Horus, for instance, was thought to protect Egyptians from evil and heal them from illness. The eye idols of Tel Brak in Syria likely served a similar function. The Babylonian incantation quoted above likewise offers a verbal counter to the evil eye.
Okay, here we go, Bryce.
May the evil eye, the sick eye, be cut off. May it split open like a leather bag. May it break into pieces like the potter's pursitu, a pot on the marketplace. When it approaches at the entrance of the street, it encounters the man without a personal God. Let the eye turn into wind. Even Asar and Abzu cannot undo this spell.
Such talismans and spells were thought to ward off the evil eye or at least mitigate its effects and can be found in archaeological records across the Mediterranean and ancient Near East. The evil eye in rabbinic literature. The rabbis expressed a similar concern about the evil eye. For instance, the Mishnah lists an evil eye as one of 3 self-destructive characteristics.
Okay, so I'll read the rabbinic material. So Rabbi Joshua said, an evil eye, the evil inclination, and hatred for humankind put a person out of this world. And the evil eye is, I mean, for those of you who can read the Hebrew, and I know it's small, is ayin hara. I'm sorry, ayin hara. Ayin is eye, ra is evil or, chaos, and so on. We come across that word a lot. So this is in the Pirkei Avot, very well-known section of Mishnah.
Rabbi Joshua said, an evil eye,
No, I just read that. So
Oh,
let's
I'm
go
sorry,
to
I'm sorry.
this
This
phrase.
phrase is explored in a later text, Avota Rabbi Nathan, which describes an ominous fate for the man who is envious of another's learning.
Yeah, my understanding of Avot, the Rabbi Natan, is a commentary on the Pirkei Avot. The Pirkei Avot is Mishnah, but there is no Gemara on that Mishnah. But there is this commentary. So he writes or asks, the evil eye, how so? A person should not look askance at his friend's learning. There is a story of someone who looked askance at his friend's learning, and his life was cut short. And he reached his end prematurely and passed on from the world. The medieval?
It's
Medieval.
a scant, by the way, it's a scance.
Askance? Oh, sorry. I don't know what I said. Ask. Oh, okay. Yes, you're right. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
The medieval sage R. Jonah of Gerona, in his commentary on the Mishnah quoted above, describes how scientists, Chachamei HaTova,
Very good. It's Chachmei HaTeva. A
Yeah.
Chacham, I think you may know the Yiddish word and Hebrew word. A Chacham is a wise person or a scholar. Teva means nature. So Chachmei HaTeva are scholars of nature. And that's the general Hebrew term, I think even modern Hebrew term for scientists, maybe not modern Hebrew, where Chachmei Torah would be, the scholars of Torah. That was very good reading without vowels.
Thank you, have explained that when the people look with covetousness at the property of their fellow.
An invisible gas, literally air, comes forth from one's thoughts and burns the items that the person is looking up with his evil eye. He also burns himself up, for he desires things that he is unable to attain. This kind of thinking destroys a person's body and shortens his life and his time on earth.
The concept is firmly entrenched in rabbinic sources. Does the Bible have a similar concept?
We shall see.
The effective eye metaphor. Around 20 passages in the Hebrew Bible connect the eye to evil in some capacity. While the Bible does not offer any clear description of the operations of the human eye, biblical authors apparently understood that the eye was an active organ, brightening and dimming, especially as individuals aged or became sick. For example, the story in which Jacob steals Esau's blessing begins.
When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, so he could not see.
Similarly, in describing his failing faculties, Job says,
My eye has grown dim from grief, and all my members are like a shadow.
in contrast, despite Moses' old age,
His eyes were undimmed and his vigor unabated. That's actually from the very end of the Torah.
the Bible also describes how the eye gathers knowledge. A look, however, can be dangerous. If a person sees God, this can be fatal, and the same is true for those that God looks upon. The eye experiences evil. Most passages that speak of an eye that experience evil describe a situation that is displeasing to an individual. For instance, when the Israelites in the wilderness complained that the food was better in Egypt,
Moses heard that the people weeping, every clan apart, each person at the entrance of his tent. The Lord was very angry, and it was evil in the eyes of Moses. Let me comment a little bit here. One of the things I always get a kick out of, where the English translation is someone was or is angry, the Hebrew is vayichar af, which literally means his nose was heated. And a very common phrase would be here it is be'enei Moshe ra. So it was something evil in the eyes of it. We're going to see a lot of examples where it says it was good in the eyes of somebody, it was evil in the eyes of someone, which is it's an Hebrew idiom for saying, you know, the person thought this was good. We're going to see a bunch of examples of this. So
the reverse is also true. A situation that is pleasing is good in the eyes.
So from Jeremiah, if it is good in your eyes to go with me to Babylon, come and I will look after you. And if it is bad in your eyes to come with me to Babylon, you need not. See, the whole land is before you. Go wherever seems good and right in your eyes. So,
So that's a metaphor.
yeah, I mean, yes. So it's tov be'enecha. That means good in your eyes. So that's that is the Hebrew terminology. If you think this is a good idea, and again, we're going to see a bunch of examples, a few more examples of this. Biblical
authors use similar metaphors to describe God's emotions.
Judah's firstborn, was evil in the eyes of Adonai, and Adonai took his life. Ra be'enei Adonai.
Unlike Enlil's evil eye that destroys Sumer, Hashem's evil eye does not kill Hashem must do this as a separate action.
Okay. Proverbs.
The expression in Proverbs. Proverbs, a collection of wisdom texts, refers to individuals who are stingy or miserly as having an evil eye, always hoarding goods and longing for more.
Do not eat the bread of a man with an evil eye. Do not desire his delicacies. A man with an evil eye hastens after wealth and does not know that want will come upon him.
In contrast, a person who is generous has a good eye.
So that's tov ayin. He who has a bountiful, or literally a good eye, will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor.
The point is not to avoid those who physically harm others with their eye. Rather, the point is to avoid those with specific dispositions, those who are greedy. The connection of evil to the eye here is metaphorical, and the biblical authors rely upon concrete experience to convey their meaning. In this case, the belief that the eye has the ability to physically affect the environment became associated with emotional experiences and influenced the way such experiences are described.
So we're going to get to Deuteronomy.
The curses in Deuteronomy. The idiom in Proverbs helps us understand the reference to doing evil with the eye in the curses in Deuteronomy 28. At first, this text sounds like an example of the evil eye at work. The full context of the verse, however, shows that the eye is not what causes the damage directly.
And this verse actually deserves a word of explanation. Deuteronomy has its own theology, which is why, of course, the scholars believe it is a separate book of Torah with a separate authorship, and scholars believe it was discovered much later than the other books during the time of King Josiah. And the basic theology of the book of Deuteronomy is that if you do good things, good things will happen to you. And if you do good things, if you obey God's laws, good things will happen to you. If you disobey God's laws, bad things will happen to you. And here is one of the worst. He who is most tender and fastidious among you shall do evil in his eyes to his brother and the wife of his bosom and the children he has spared, to share with them any of the flesh of the children that he eats, because he has nothing else left as a result of the desperate straits to which your enemy shall reduce you in all your towns. I'll read one more paragraph and then I want to comment on this. Joanne?
The siege causes starvation, and the man looks with an evil eye at his family, meaning that he decides not to share any of his food, in this case, the flesh of his dead children. The siege causes the person to act in an uncharitable ways, but the act of looking is not itself the cause of the evil. Thus, Deuteronomy expresses in a harsh way the same image that we saw in Proverbs.
Yeah, it's hard to express it more harshly. So, the image is that if you disobey God, things will be so bad that you won't even share the flesh of your dead children with other family members. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I do want to show you a photo. Let me see if I can do this.
It's like Hieronymus Bosch kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's bad. So here is an example of something I saw. It says this actually is an example of something I saw in a Holocaust museum on Mount Zion. So it is a jacket that a Nazi guard forced a Jewish tailor to make from Torah scrolls. And if you, God, I actually was doing some. So it's clearly made of a Torah scroll, but as it said, or it was explained to me, I don't think it even says it on this, on the caption here. But the Torah scroll the scroll pages that he selected were these curses that are placed on people that do evil. So this Nazi guard was walking around literally with the Torah's curses on him. Let's go back to sharing the text we were just looking at.
The two things.
Yeah.
But first of all, she was his daughter, not his daughter-in-law.
Oh, we're talking now about. I saw you posted, and I can't quite find it.
The thing we read, and where it said the eye is now understood by scientists to be passive, that maybe is what biologists believe. But I thought that the view of, and you're probably the best rabbi in the world to answer this because you're also a physicist. I thought the view was that you can't look at something without changing it. That this ties into something quantum mechanics with Heisenberg and Stardy. I don't know exactly, but that
yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So I would say you can't see something without changing it. It's a different verb because the act of seeing means light is hitting it, and if light is hitting it, if it's small enough, it will have a significant effect on the object. And this is one of the ways of explaining the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. If I haven't lost people in the Hebrew, I'll try and lose you in the physics. So yes, you're right. But it's not the act of looking. So it is interesting that some of the texts that we read have this sense of if you look at someone with a horrible look, you are in some sense hurting them. And I mean, why would you think that's true? I don't think this is terribly mysterious.
Saul's evil eye. The closest example in the Bible to the classical evil eye that can affect the surrounding environment is the description of how Saul's watchful eye causes him to be overcome by an evil spirit.
From that day on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The next day, an evil spirit of God gripped Saul, and he began to rave in his house while David was playing the lyre as he did daily.
This passage is the closest we get to the evil eye in a biblical text. Indeed, Rashi glosses the term ain as ain ra'ah, evil eye. However, the person affected is Saul himself. The story certainly foreshadows trouble for David, but he is only endangered by Saul's repeated attempts to kill him, not by his evil eye.
Yeah, actually, the text in the Hebrew is ayin vav nun, which would be ovain, but the vav sometimes is a stretched version of a yud, and vav's changed to yud. These are kind of weak Hebrew letters. This is part of the Hebrew grammatical world, which would send me running, screaming into the hallway. Alan.
So is this part you made a few minutes ago about the way light works with the physics of the physical eye? Can we see some of this in this idea that you can hear things, but you don't necessarily process them, or you stare at something, but you don't realize, you don't think about it, you don't comprehend the information that goes into your brain through the eyeball? There's two steps here, right? I'm trying to convey.
Yeah, there's actually a wonderful series on Netflix now, which I'm almost finished with, and I think it's called The Human, or it's basically 6-hour-long sessions about different parts of our body. And I just actually watched last night the one about the senses. So I don't really even understand your question, but that will not stop me from answering it. Hold on a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. But basically, any sensory perception, certainly vision and hearing, has to do with some stimulus entering an organ, either an eye or an ear, and ultimately being translated into electrical impulses that go on to the brain. So that function is very different in the eye than it is in the ear, and even more different in the nose, where I learned last night that the human can sense 1 trillion different smells, according to this documentary, which blows my mind.
One thing I do want to say about this idea about, looking at something will change it. Okay. The thing that's important to understand is that whether or not you're looking at it, if the light is bouncing off of it, it's still changing it.
Yes, from a quantum mechanical point of view.
From a quantum mechanical point of view. Now, if people what they mean by interacting with something, that becomes the social Heisenberg principle, which is if two people are talking, someone goes, "Oh, don't let me bother you. I'll just listen in." Okay. It's going to change the nature of their conversation or change their interaction. But the physical phenomenon is unrelated to that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And also, if I do this, and I look at someone with a scowl or a grimace, or it communicates emotion. So to me, they talk about the eyes being the window of the soul. So it seems to me to be very natural to have a primitive sense that an evil eye, an evil look can actually harm someone. Alan.
So there's a sender and a receiver in this discussion, the way I'm hearing this. And if the sender is trying to inflict an evil eye and create some kind of bad thing, if the sender isn't paying attention or chooses not to pay attention, then doesn't the evil eye break down, the concept break down?
Well, I would say if you're treating the evil eye as a form of communication, of body language, clearly. But I
Yeah.
think the belief, the medieval belief and the ancient belief in the evil eye wasn't treating it that way. I think they actually thought about it, let's remember Superman with his X-ray vision, who could set things on fire and so on. I think that's the way they were thinking about it. That
So we haven't used this word yet, but I remember growing up thinking that using the concept of the evil eye has something to do with superstition.
Oh yeah, and we're going to get to that in the next
We're
article.
going to get to that. Okay,
on Kinehora.
Beliefs
Thank
were
you.
inspired by these
Sorry?
beliefs the other way around.
Sorry?
I think that the belief that the abilities of Superman were inspired by the beliefs we're talking about, that the article's about, and not the other way around.
Oh, well, I mean, I was just saying that would be an example where someone's look actually had power of its own. And I don't know who, they were two Jewish guys that wrote that comic strip, and I don't know where they got it, but I bet their mothers said Kinehora all the time. So, okay, we're almost at the end of this article.
Evil eye, not in the Hebrew Bible. Did the people of ancient Israel and Judah believe in the evil eye, that certain people could physically harm others just by looking at them, as was the common belief in the ancient
Near East.
and ancient Greece, and was accepted in Rabbinic Judaism? We have no clear evidence for it. The Bible does not reference evil eye in this way explicitly, and there is little evidence for amulets and incantations designed specifically to ward off the evil eye from this period. The Bible does associate the eye with an ability to affect the environment and the individual, but in biblical texts, when someone casts an evil eye upon another, that is a description of the person's emotional state, not a magical attack requiring talismans to thwart.
Yeah, and as Ruth said, as Bryce said, it's a metaphor. Okay, so we're gonna read the article about Kinehora. So I'm just interested, for those of you that grew up in Jewish households, how was the term Kinehora used?
If someone said something positive, like, "Oh, you have such beautiful children,"
Right.
Kinehora.
Right. So
Yeah, it was more when you were given a compliment.
Okay.
And I guess there was a fear that there was a certain amount of jealousy and bad wishes that you had beautiful children and the other person may not have, or whatever. But it seemed to be associated with compliments.
Okay. Anybody else have this experience growing up with Kinehora?
No, kind of like a knock on wood.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
what I remember. Knock on wood. That's a
Yes.
great.
Right.
And
Yeah.
where does that expression come from?
Knock on wood?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've come across two. I gave a talk once on Jewish superstitions, and knock on wood. There were two thoughts about it. One is the idea that evil spirits lurk in trees, so you're knocking on wood to frighten them away. And then another theory is that it's like touching the true cross, so it's Christian origin. Those are the two that I came up with. But yeah, it was, and even if someone says, "What a beautiful child," my sense was you weren't suspecting the person saying that of giving them the evil eye. I remember having a very distinct sense that you're going to invite like the evil eye coming from the heavens or somewhere,
Yeah.
like an evil angel or something. Basically, clear superstition that you're
Yes.
asking for bad luck by calling out how beautiful
Yes.
this thing is.
Yes.
Bryce.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a natural human superstition to think that if things are going well, then things going poorly are just around the corner. And that because it's no one's experience that things just keep getting better forever.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And so the idea that someone says beautiful, now you're going, okay, what's going to balance this out? Okay.
Yeah. As you were saying that, though, it struck me that if something good happens to someone, for example, you just graduated college or you just won the lottery. That wouldn't be greeted with Kinehora. That would be greeted with Mazel Tov, which actually Mazel means stars as in constellations. It's an astrological allusion. But the evil eye has this sense that there's evil spirits lurking out there, and you don't want to call their attention to it. Another example is, I don't know if it's really connected with the evil eye, but in the Jewish world, you would never, ever have a baby shower before baby is born. I don't know if those of
Yes.
you who grew up in
Yeah.
Jewish households
Yes.
would agree with that. That
Yes,
is like a flashing neon sign, evil eye, stop, visit here. That
Yes.
and we would always say, you're going to give them the Kinehora.
We also couldn't celebrate a birthday early or, wish somebody a happy birthday early.
Oh,
Right.
that's interesting. That I didn't quite connect, but
Right.
yeah, it makes sense. Alan?
I'm looking up the word, but I can't get it right away. You don't, when somebody is pregnant, there's a certain thing you don't say, and you say it instead. And does anybody remember that? Or I can probably find
You're
it. I
talking
think
about Jewish tradition or?
Jewish tradition, something
Yeah.
that you don't say.
You
You
never
don't
say,
we wouldn't say Mazel Tov or anything until
no.
after the baby is born.
But there is another word.
Yeah,
It's called
Hebrew for at the right time.
B'sha'a
Oh,
Tova.
B'sha'ah Tovah, which means in a good hour. Like, may there
Instead
be a
of-
good hour coming.
Yeah, that's
something.
all you would say to when you know that a baby is coming,
Yeah.
but not there yet. Yeah,
Yeah, so
Mhm.
you wouldn't say Mazel Tov,
no.
because that's inviting the evil eye. And in English, somebody says I've just learned that I'm pregnant. In English, it would be perfectly natural and appropriate to say congratulations. But it wouldn't be a Yiddishkeit thing to say, because again, you don't want to invite the evil eye. Okay, but we do want to invite an article about the evil eye.
What,
So,
Rabbi, I just wanted to ask you, what was
Yeah.
ANE? What does that?
A&E is ancient Near East.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason why anybody should actually know that unless you read a lot of these.
It
articles.
even carries on when driving on the freeway. Never say, oh, look how clear it is. There's no traffic, because what's going to happen? The freeway gods are listening.
Right, you're going to give the freeway a Kinehora.
The evil eye of the freeway.
Yeah, but yeah, and I would say, if you grew up in a Jewish home, kind of a Yiddishkeit home, that sort of pervades your thinking. Even hanging out with my brothers,
Well,
we
it's
would say,
future events.
don't give it a Kinehora.
Yeah,
Sorry, Frank?
so it's like future events. That's the problem with it. You can say, congratulations on having attained this thing in the past that you did, but it's got nothing to do with, oh, let's hope that things go well for you in the future.
Yeah, but if someone says they're pregnant, you would say congratulations. I mean,
No,
I would
I understand.
Yeah,
That's because,
but you wouldn't if your bubby was there. Alan, you still have your hand up. I don't know if that's
Oh,
just
no,
okay.
sorry.
No problem. Okay, so I actually don't know. Are we seeing the article or not yet?
No.
Okay. There it is. Okay, so we have some time. Jewish word Kinehora. And there's the evil eye. And would someone else like to read? Joanne was doing.
I could do it.
Okay, Patricia.
Or no, go
please.
ahead, Ken and Patricia, go ahead.
Yes, please.
Okay. Who's afraid of the evil eye? In 2004, the stoic cowboy-esque Clint Eastwood unexpectedly proved himself more heavy.
Tevye.
Tevye, the dairyman, than Dirty Harry. In response to a reporter's question about the chances of his movie Mystic River winning the Best Picture Oscar, Eastwood cried, "Kanahara." He explained that it was a Jewish expression used to ward off a jinx, one of countless protective folk actions intended to avoid fool or attack evil spirits.
Hard for me to imagine Clint Eastwood saying Kinehora.
Yeah. Kanehora is a contraction of three Yiddish words, Einhara,
Yeah.
literally not the evil eye. The Kain comes from the German for no, and the Einhara from Hebrew. The evil eye is one of the world's oldest and most widely held superstitions. Its place in Jewish lore is rooted in classical Judaism and Jewish folk religion dating to the Bible, the Talmud and Rabbinic Midrash. There's a rich history, particularly from the Middle Ages onward, of often bizarre and elaborate folk practices, invocations such as Kanehora being a rather tame example, aimed at thwarting the malicious intent or effect of the evil eye. The evil eye stems from the Greek theory that the eye can shoot rays that strike with harmful or deadly forces. In Greek legend, for example, the monster Medusa can turn a man into stone with a single glance, says Richard G. Koss, author of Reflections of the Evil Eye. This capability is known as jettatura, a
I guess.
Latin term for a malevolent gaze with the power to harm. According to Alan Dundes, the late folklorist from the University of California, Berkeley, in an essay, Wet and Dry, the Evil Eye. The evil eye may have been introduced into Jewish thought by Talmudic authorities exposed to Babylonian culture, according to Joshua Trachtenberg, the late author of Jewish Magic and Superstitions. A study in folk religion, the Babylonian Talmud claimed that there were rabbis who had the power to turn a person into a heap of stone with just a glance. Sefer
Sefer
Hasidim,
Hasidim.
the Book of the Pious, a 12th, 13th century guide to Germanic Jewish religious practice, similarly warns, angry glances of man's eye call into being an evil angel who speedily takes vengeance on the cause of his wrath. Dundes also links jettatura to liquids including water, wine, saliva, and even semen, which were thought to protect, either as a weapon or a shield, against the evil eye. That works. This may be an origin for the practice of spitting 3 times or saying in response to expressions such as Kanehora.
Okay, so how many of you have had the experience of that with grandma or Bubby going toot toot toot? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
grandma.
So in my talk on Jewish superstitions, and I think I actually referred to one of those books in there, or have one of them. They say that's the idea of spit being protective is actually mentioned a couple of times in the New Testament, with Jesus heals blindness by spitting into the eye or putting saliva into the eye of the afflicted person. Okay, let's continue with the fun. The power of liquids.
The power of liquids is reflected in the Talmudic interpretation of Jacob's biblical blessing of Joseph. Just as the fishes in the sea are covered by water and the evil eye has no power over them, so the evil eye has no power over the seed of Joseph. The pervasive use of fish imagery and amulets in the Middle East and North Africa can be linked to this and similar sources.
So once
The
again,
fear
on
of
the
being
Chamsa, there's that fish.
Yeah.
And I read in a couple of cases, and I don't remember if it's strictly linked to this kind of thing, the idea which they just mentioned here, that the evil eye can't penetrate water. And I think I read, but I may just be misremembering it. It's one of the reasons why you want to have a fish meal with, you know, with a like a Shabbat dinner, and they serve on Rosh Hashanah. It's traditional to serve a fish with the head intact. And again, the fish is a lucky character because the evil eye can't penetrate the water.
The explanation I heard for that had to do with Rosh Hashanah being the head of the year.
Yes, so you have the head, but you could have a calf's head, or not a rabbit, not kosher. Anyway, But so the fish has a particular positive connotation there. Okay, we're up to the fear of being the object.
Fear of being the object of other people's envy is the common societal root of fear of the evil eye. Across diverse cultures, says Boris Gershom, professor of economics at American University. This concern, which Trachtenberg calls the moral version of the evil eye, can be traced to the pagan conviction that the gods are essentially man's adversaries, that they envy him his joys and his triumphs, and spitefully harry him for the felicities that they do not share. The idea is also common in Jewish texts. It's found in midrashic tales such as Sarah casting the evil eye on Hagar and Jacob hiding Dinah in a box to protect her from Esau's evil eye. It's also in rabbinic literature. Johann ben Zakkai
Yochanan
in the
ben Zakkai.
Ethics of the Fathers ask his disciples which character trait a person should most shun. Rabbi Eliezer responds with an evil or jealous eye is the worst quality. Rabbi Joshua says that the evil eye will cause a person's early death. The Babylonian Talmud warns the owner of a beautiful coat to keep it hidden from the potentially envious eyes of a visitor, and cautions against overly admiring another's crops, lest the evil eye damage them. In these cases, behaviors and traits, not sayings or talismans, are seen as the best protection from the evil eye. While the idea of the evil eye is ancient, the term kahara came later. It was likely first used in medieval Germany as a translation from the Hebrew.
I'll do it. Bli ayin hara.
Thank you. According to Rivka Ulmer, professor of Jewish studies at Bucknell University and author of The Evil Eye in the Bible and Rabbinic Literature, German Jews encountered it in the numerous religious pamphlets of psalms and other prayer books produced for women in Yiddish. It was so widespread that German neighbors started using equivalents of kahara like on. Go ahead.
Ubishrein? I don't know.
Okay. This is not to be mentioned, and Uberufen, we don't call upon the evil eye, which are still used today.
And
From the 17th century.
when I read that, I was thinking about, was it Harry Potter? So one of the characters has a name which shouldn't be mentioned.
Oh, yeah, he should not be mentioned. Yeah. From the 17th century onward, according to Trachtenberg, no evil eye expressions had become automatic accompaniments on Jewish lips of the slightest compliment.
Yeah,
This
let's hold
lasted.
on a second. I just want to make
Yeah.
sure you, the phrase "no evil eye" expressions like Kinehora had become automatic accompaniments to the slightest compliment. So someone said, you know, oh, what a beautiful new car you have, you would say Kinehora. Okay, sorry. This lasted,
However, only as long as the Yiddish language flourished. Compared to contemporary English, writes Michael Wexon, born to Kvetch, Yiddish is a regular haunted house where demons frolic and sinister forces rage nearly unchecked. In modern times, says Sarah Bonin Benar, professor of Jewish studies at the Hebrew Union College and author of the Jewish English lexicon Kinehora and Belai on Hara, are used mainly by Orthodox Jews in the United States and Israel. Today, belief in the evil eye is very low. According to the Pew Research Center, only about 16% of Americans take the idea to heart. Still, the use of protective amulets and talismans, protective expressions such as knock on wood, sales of hamsas, perhaps accompanied by a complimentary red Kabbalah string, and eye jewelry do not seem to be decreasing. As the Safar Hasidim would say, one should not believe in superstitions, but it is best to be heedful of them.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of a story about a physicist who was visiting the laboratory of another famous physicist, and above the door of the laboratory was a horseshoe. And the first physicist says to the second, Professor, surely you don't believe in good luck charms. And the other physicist said, of course I don't believe it. But the amazing thing is it works whether you believe it or not.
You know about Descartes' bet, right?
No.
No? Oh, well, Descartes said that one should believe in God, because if one is wrong and there is no God, you're not out anything.
Right.
But if there is a God and you don't believe in him, then you've lost.
Right.
So Descartes' bet is that you should believe in God.
Yes, but he doesn't specify which God. I had a very
Right.
Well,
That's the counter
close
argument.
friend
That,
who said that, when they feel like they're dying, they're going to convert to Christianity because that's all it takes, apparently. I don't think this is true, but if you convert to Christianity, you're in good with Jesus, and if it turns out that it's really Jesus up there, you're okay. So my question to this person was, suppose you go up there and you meet Moses, and he says, "You believe in who?" I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have heard of that. I didn't realize it was associated with Descartes. Alan.
Was there a name a couple paragraphs earlier? It went by, I didn't catch it, where you're not supposed to say somebody's name?
It was he was talking about a Harry Potter character called
Oh no, yeah,
Voldemort.
I no, yeah. Thank you. So I won't put it up. No, it reminded me of in the Harry Potter series, one of the evil guys. I don't even know who it is. Apparently is identified of that whose name shall not be spoken or something.
So that link to me is Haman or Amalek. Was that context out of place? Irrelevant. Okay.
Well, only that, when you're doing the Purim story, you sound the grogger and you try and drown out his name. I would say sometimes, like, if I'm thinking now, my grandparents, if they would mention the word Hitler, they would say, may his memory be blotted out or something.
Yeah, that
like
kind
that.
of thing.
Yeah.
That's not connected
It
to
wasn't in our text, but
and it's not
no.
related to the Harry Potter thing. Okay,
I
thank you.
mean, who knows? But it's no. I think it's not directly in the story. Okay, so I must admit, most of us grew up using the term kahara. The explanation here makes perfect sense, but now at least you have a sense of the Yiddish and Hebrew origins.
So
You want to know what's? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Alan.
Just really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, Alan, and then Bryce.
Okay. You always need an arbitrator for these conflicts, right? No, my question is, we all made reference that we grew up with that. Is there anybody on this call who actually uses it now?
Well, I would say, again, when I'm hanging out with my brothers, and we're sort of in an old New York Yiddishkeit, the word will come up, and
Okay.
kind of like Clint Eastwood, if there's actually sort of a positive superstition where somebody says, well, we'll see you tomorrow at the show, and a Hebrew response would be Bezrat Hashem, which means with the help of God. And actually in Arabic, which is used in the Sephardic world, the expression would be Inshallah, which literally means if Allah wills it. But this is used by the Jews in Morocco, and I think probably.
Are we converting this to be related to Kinehora then?
No. Well, I'm comparing it to. I mean, one way of invoking a superstition, I would say. I don't know if you'd call this a superstition, is that if you're promising to do something, you're acknowledging that you want to have God's help in doing it. So you would say Bezrat Hashem. And in fact, every time I inscribe my book, in the upper right-hand corner, some of you have the book, you'll see a bet and like a quotation mark and a hey, and that's an abbreviation for Bezrat Hashem, because I'm acknowledging God's help in doing this. And the other one, which I just can't help mentioning, is as you may know, maybe you don't know this, Judaism takes vows very seriously. So breaking a vow is a very big deal. A vow is a neder, and so we have this prayer, kol nidrei, all vows, and so it's a very common Hebrew expression. If you say, Alan, I'm going to see you tomorrow night on Zoom, and we might add bli neder, saying I'm not making this as a vow, because if I for some reason I can't do it, I don't want to invoke God's punishment for having broken a vow. But all of these things, I think is sort of an underlying sense that there are forces at work that you don't want to upset. And I think some are get the kind of the blessings of, like what you say, with God's help. And and I think that's even a common expression in English in a non-Jewish world. With God's help, we'll be able to accomplish this thing.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is when I grew up, I also encountered Kinehora. Okay. But that was the name of my gym coach.
Really?
Yes. Ken O'Hara.
Oh, Ken O'Hara. That's actually
so
very
you're all
funny.
saying Kinehora, and I'm going, oh my God, this is
Ken O'Hara, yes. Yeah, that's actually probably not an unusual name. And if they lived in a Jewish neighborhood, they would never stop hearing. They would use Kenneth rather than Ken.
You should use it as a password on your computer.
Okay, gang. So, bli neder, bezrat Hashem, inshallah. We will see each other on Shabbat, on Monday. And next Wednesday, we're going to discuss the question. It's really the larger question: who is a Jew? And can Jews be kicked out? I can't remember the exact name of the article. I'm going to be sending it out to you tonight. It's actually a pretty interesting discussion from A Moment magazine. And then also, I think we may even discuss the CCAR resolution on patrilineal descent, which is, I think most of you know that traditionally you're Jewish if your mother is Jewish. The origin of that is really interesting, the technical origin. And then the Reform movement modified that rule. And so, with God's help, we'll meet again to discuss it.
By the way, I'd always learned that the correct answer, when someone says, I will see you tomorrow, the correct answer is not if I see you first.
Yeah, that's actually comes from a slightly different tradition. Sounds more like Clint Eastwood than heavier. Okay, gang. So take care and stay well. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay,
Thank
good
you.
night. Good night.